Good evening. I hope you are still all, still with me in your brain. I have brought to you a topic, SharePoint in model-driven apps. I was surprised when I saw another SharePoint topic I think at 12 it was. And I thought, ooh, watch that better because we might share some points, and I don't want to redo them, but fortunately, I have a different topic here. So, hi, I'm Marius. I currently live in Vienna and work at Evanade as a customer engagement developer. I have a blog which you can visit, and also with my own YouTube channel and the one from PowerPlatform learners. If you like the session today, look over there for more content. You can also just Google my name. It's so unique that you will find nothing else but my stuff. So I also have a natural enemy, and that is called PowerPoint. So the only thing I have left in this presentation is some rough agenda, what we will take a look at. So we will go through the SharePoint integration experience. So how does it look? How do you set it up until 1915, roughly? Then we will look at more advanced scenarios with multi-site and how the document locations, so document locations I will explain a little bit later, they are connecting dataverse to the SharePoint, are working, and then in automations with Flow, this is how you can add benefit with Power Automate to this integration. And then in the last 15 minutes, we will talk about Teams, and also there, how can we do it with Power Automate? And after that, time for questions in the last 15 minutes. So, and then it's already the slide demo time, because I will now leave the presentation and take you into Dataverse or into customer engagement. So, first setup. Setup is in the advanced settings. I preloaded a bunch of stuff because it takes sometimes really 2 minutes to load. So the advanced settings are found here with the settings icon, advanced settings, and then you get into the old interface of the Dynamics, and here settings, document management, here are all your options for SharePoint integration. One option I'm missing here, this is where it currently says OneNote integration. In a fresh tenant, or in a fresh environment rather, you will see here enabled server-based SharePoint integration. This is the first step. And if you click on that, I fortunately saved it as a favorite, this wizard. A pop-up appears, and you can just step through this. Let me see which step. Here, okay, first I select if it's online or an on-premise SharePoint, and then in this step here, I can enter the site where I'm connecting to, so a SharePoint site. So that means I need a SharePoint site. And I need the URL. So SharePoint sites are created in the SharePoint Admin Center. So if you have any SharePoint site, you can just add a -admin right here to get to this. And the other option, and the option I always use because I never know what the URL of the SharePoint is I go through the admin Power Platform Microsoft.com, which I know as Power Platform developer. Then I go to Admin Centers, Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and then down here under Show All, there are the Admin Centers with SharePoint. So this is just a different way of getting there. And here under Active Sites, I can see all my SharePoint sites, and I just can create a team site here. For example, I will take this standard template and then I can give it any name, CE demo in this case, and the owner is admin. So, and then a different time zone. It's +1 here in Vienna. So, and then you can add members. I would consider, so should all users be able to use the SharePoint integration, then you can go with something like just adding the security group of the Dynamics environment here as members, or if it's more tied down, you can use other smaller groups as site members to this site. I have pre-created one here. This is the CE Global Power Platform Bootcamp SharePoint. This is a standard site. So this is the default site I've added here in the wizard, and then you just click, I think, next. Yeah, it's now hanging a bit, probably for some minutes, to validate the sites. Oh no, it was quite quick. That I have added to my dataverse environment. And that's it in this wizard. So then it's finished. This is a one-time setup, so you will never use that wizard again. This is why it's not showing here anymore. The other thing you need is document management settings. And this wizard is you will need more often, because here you say, okay, not just that I'm connected to the SharePoint site, but which entities are connected. And I've opened this wizard without touching anything. And when I previously, I will close some of these tabs. When I previously enabled the SharePoint integration, I only enabled it for the account entity. Everything else here of these document libraries, they were just coming with the default SharePoint template, or standard template was called. So so only account is a real entity that is enabled for document management. However, if you scroll down through this wizard, here we have something, for example, playbook activity. This wizard activates some entities, standard entities, for document management even if you haven't enabled them previously. So the thing I always do here is click everything, click nothing, and then select the entities you need. Then I won't create a library for playbook activity, for example. So then we have the options for how's it called, hierarchies, so that you make a hierarchy of, okay, I have the account library, then the account name, and then I create folders below that account. I admit I have never I have never used it. I've considered it, but we've never used it in a project. I think you can use it really well in things like key accounting, when you have not too many accounts and you want to use the permissions here. So like you can give permissions based on the whole site, on a document library, and on any folder below the document library. And doing it on a folder basis has really the same problems as sharing in Dynamics, right? If you share too much, you have so many sharing records that the whole system has trouble evaluating what you can see and what you cannot see. And then it gets really slow. So problematic, and you can kind of circumvent this here if we think about a system that only has 100 customer accounts, but a lot of opportunities, orders, quotes, I don't know, something below it, maybe cases as well. And then you could you could go with the sharing, do it on the account level, and everything below, because they are subfolders, is automatically shared as well. So yeah, that might be an option. We'll use it here, of course, now. So, and then in the next step, well, let's see if this will work. Sometimes I need to do it twice. So then a simple reload works. Yeah, that's what I mentioned. Okay, now it's working. Good. So, and then it lists you here the entities with their libraries. So you can see it creates a library with the logical name of the entity. So then what does the experience look like? I will work with a new account here. So this will be the Global Power Platform Bootcamp 1. So I've just created this account. Let's take a look at the accounts in my SharePoint. GPPB1 is not present. That's an observation we will need. As soon as I click the Documents tab under Related here, I can see, okay, it says Documents on default site 1. Let's jump back to SharePoint, and I might need to refresh, or it will refresh itself. Okay, I will refresh. So it creates this folder for the record GPPB1 the first time a user enters the Documents tab. This is a manual action by the user. It's not when you create the account, it's when you enter the Documents tab. In this tab, I can create new things, and I will do it with a folder so we can see later, folder, not later. Some things I can navigate inside folders. You can see here with the breadcrumbs, I can navigate to the top folder, into the subfolder, and also here we can create files like a Word. And the other option is, of course, to upload things. So for example, this open. It's in use. Okay, let's use this picture instead. So you can also upload things. I get this question a lot. Can I drag and drop like I can in SharePoint? No, you cannot. You can click the upload button and then drag and drop something onto the choose file. So if I drag this here, this works, this drag and drop, but I cannot drop it here into the grid. Sadly not. And of course, I can open any document just by clicking on it from this grid. This is the main point here. The other really important button, I think, here is the Open Location button, because if I select a location here, I am in SharePoint. And this gives me all the options of SharePoint. So here, a drag and drop would work. If I drag and drop here, it's now uploading. So yeah, this browser drag and drop works really well then. And what else does work? For example, have I set, yeah, I have set it up here. Sorry, that was not my intention. I can, for example, set columns. I've created here a notes column, and this notes column is a custom column I created. And if I go with the properties here with notes, hello from SharePoint, I can set these here, but I cannot set them in Dynamics in the Documents grid. However, if I go to the top page here, you can see I have added a column, notes, and remember this is a custom column, so I can show data from SharePoint in the grid. I just cannot edit it. Sometimes you think maybe with edit properties you can do it, but you really can only change the name and the title of the file or folder. So yeah, not the whole thing. So how did I show this notes column? That's something we need to discuss. So this whole documents related navigation is revolved around the SharePoint document entity. And to this entity, I've just added a column which display name is the same as the column name in SharePoint. So it's notes. The logical name here in this case is, it doesn't matter. It's only important that the display name is the same. And for most data types, unless it's really a number, you would use single line of text. For example, even if it's a choice, you wouldn't make a choice in Dynamics because the SharePoint submits it as a text and not as a number. So it's single line of text. And then you can add it to the view, and that in this case was the documents associated grid. So that's a lot of the standard experience. I will show you a different experience, and this is the Files tab. I will refresh maybe this account so that we have it as it would be in the standard. So, okay, we have here files, and this files does show me basically exactly the same thing. It's just a subgrid and not a related grid. So also the navigation here works with the folder and the breadcrumbs. That's interesting because that's not a grid feature. That's only in the document associated grid. If I switch to any other view, like this all SharePoint document, this looks like a grid. And I completely lose, I mean, it's here in the path, but I lose the structure, the folder structures. I cannot see them anymore. So this document associated grid is much better than any grid we can define just because of this feature. And otherwise, new upload, open location, everything the same. So this grid I wanted to show you in a short, I think it's here. Yes. In a short demonstration why I think this is important. If I customize my form and files is not on there and I want to bring it in there, I get a problem, and that problem is that the documents associated grid is not a regular grid. It's the it's the associated grid. And let me select it here. If you could look here at default view, probably haven't zoomed this one yet. Yes, so I've selected the grid. Default view, it's kind of empty in here, right? There's a white space, and the only selection I have is all SharePoint document. And of course, if I have added a custom view, then this custom view would also show up. So let me edit this one. This is the documents associated grid, which Microsoft by default has set to their form. And I can't replicate that behavior, for example, on a custom entity. I couldn't select this view. But you can do it, and right here, the GUID of the document associated grid is in this case 0016. If I copy this GUID and then I download a solution, so I have this solution with the My Account form. I download it, unpack it, so I just unzipped it because it's really small. I will zoom to you in a second. So I've selected the customizations XML. This usually has all the form customizations in there. And then I will just search for something like documents. Yes, this looks good. And then you can see the document subgrid and there the view ID. So if you only were able to choose all SharePoint document, and you have the documents associated grid, just copy in the correct GUID of the grid and then package everything as so by just zipping it back up again and uploading it to the development environment, and it will work. But as we saw with the form earlier, it just looks odd then when you try to customize the form, the subgrid in here in files. Why do I talk so much about this? Just use documents and related. I have heard some notes, I'm not too sure, that Microsoft will move away from these documents here and really work with the files tab that they've added everywhere. Probably because they think it's a better user experience with a direct tab that's just less clicks. Okay. That was my grid. Then I will talk next about multi-SharePoint. So usually you will be good with one SharePoint, but there might be situations, for example, I had the situation you have multiple departments in the organization and they can see the same record, so the same account in this example, but they can not share some files because they are restricted. Think about a legal department, right? And not everyone can see the legal department's files, contracts, I don't know, with the customer. And so you kind of want to restrict that, but you also want a location where the departments can share files so they can collaborate. And for that, in the advanced settings here, document management, here's SharePoint sites, you can just add a second SharePoint site. Oh, I can't move that. Okay. So I've added here the site for department. Does not like me anymore. Now maybe. Yes. Okay. So I've added a site here, and this site has a different URL at the end. And this site will immediately work. So the only difference between those two is the first one I've added is marked as the default site and the second one is not. So when I created the account and switched to the files or documents, the default site was taken to create the location. And the other one is simply ignored. So let's swap over here, and I hope I still have it open. No. So what else did I do here? In this department side, I created a document location, and that's called department documents. And I've said, okay, the relative URL based on the parent side is shared documents. And now I will use that information. So we'll go with add location. I will change the parent side here to department documents. The folder name is fine for me. And now I have a second location. It's now location 1. And also in this location, I can create a file. And then I will open this location. By the way, you already see the whole grid can work with multiple locations here. I have location 1. This is the one in department, and the documents on default site 1. That's just how Dynamics names these by default, is the auto created one. So if we look over here, we have the folder, we have the file, we have it in documents, which called shared documents. So everything is fine here. That was manual effort adding the second location. So it's doable, and we will soon talk about automation with Flow. This will just help the user. I've seen this in this specific. They had 3 departments, and everyone needed their own location and the shared location. So in total, there would be 4 locations. So yeah. It's kind of a thing to create them by hand if you have many records. Of course, in this key account scenario, for example, yeah, okay, you just have 100 accounts, you can do it by hand. But if you have, I don't know, on a case management level, for example, you're in a call center and it takes seconds, you cannot wait, so you cannot oblige the user to create them manually. I will try the all locations here. If you have multiple locations or document locations, yeah, okay, that happens. So usually you see then all documents of all locations you have connected. So in the sample of 4 locations, you just see the documents of all 4 locations, but of course only if you have the right permissions to see them. So if you have only access to 2 of those SharePoint sites, let's say the shared one, and I'm in the legal department, so the legal department location, I will only see the documents of those 2 locations, and because I just don't have access, everything runs in the user context here, I won't see the other 2 location files. And also, if I try to open here a document location, so I will probably be able to see the record in CRM, so the document location that connects the CRM record with the SharePoint. I would be able to see it here in the list, but if I select it, okay, I go to the dynamics, asks the SharePoint with my user context for the files, I don't have access. So we'll get an error like this, that I don't have the permissions to load the documents. So then let's go over to my solutions again. Because SharePoint customization, more often than not, I get asked, okay, we need to, I don't know, store a document, create it automatically and put it in SharePoint. That's really, customers ask for this, and Microsoft has not provided us with good something like a custom API or something to create a folder. And if the user does not click in the files tab here, the location will not be there. So I do run into the situation that there is no document location for a record, and we might need to create them for storing a file, a newly created one, or maybe we need to read a file from that location. Yeah, something like this may happen. And in flows, you can do that. It's a little bit, well, I don't like it. It's too cumbersome, too complicated to do it. So everything, oh, well, in this case, I've talked about the grid. The grid here. Let me switch it to a regular one here again. So the grid here shows SharePoint documents, but it knows where to look for these documents based on a document location. That's the name of the entity. So I can ask the system for document locations regarding my account. And then let's say there is no location, then what I need is basically to create a SharePoint folder. That's clear. So I select the SharePoint. You can do this with environment variables, for example, to differentiate between different environments. I need a library, so it's account in this case. And then for folder path, my suggestion is to follow the Microsoft standard here. let's take a look how they do it. So they take the primary field of the entity. That's the name for account, then an underscore, and then the GUID of the record. This makes sure if you create two accounts with the same name, they would have the same folder name. So by appending the GUID, they make sure that they are always unique. So even if you have two of the same name, think about contacts. Some names are just really common and you would otherwise run into a collision. So we need to create the folder, but we also need to create the document location records so that Dynamics knows, okay, there is already a folder and I need to look for documents in that folder. And yeah, the relative URL of the folder, that's clear. The regarding, I think, is also clear. And then there is an important thing that you need to look for the parent site or location. So I don't need that. I don't need that. So let's take a look with document management under Sharepoint document locations. And it's loading. Okay, so let's take a look at the one from GBPPB1. This location has a relative URL, which is like the folder is named. And then from here, you can take a look at the parent, and this has a relative URL of account, and from there to the default site. And this has then not a relative URL anymore, but an absolute one. And if I stack those with slashes, I get the full URL, right? So it's CE GBPP SharePoint and then slash account slash this thing here, and then you have the full URL of the folder. So that's how you search. This has some advantages. For example, had a migration lately, and they moved the whole SharePoint from A to B, and they moved the CRM, and you only needed to change the absolute URL in this default site and everything worked again because it's hierarchical. So only change run record and all the sites were working. But it has the disadvantage that I also need to obey this scheme when I'm creating these in flows. So in this simple example where I know, okay, the parent location will be named account and there will be only one location that has this relative URL. I can just query this out and set this one as the parent. So here a little trick on that. This is way too small for you. Maybe like this. No, it's still too small. So here we can see that if you have a list query in Power Automate and you know that it will give you exactly one element as response, you can just use the array indexes with the 0 to select the first element. So then you don't need to go with the for each. So, and then I have this set up for creating a new account. I already think this has quite a lot of actions just for creating a new location. And as soon as I'm in a, for example, multi-SharePoint environment, this starts breaking down because I cannot get the document location URL like this. I need to consider what is the parent site in this situation. So I first need to query out the correct parent site, then add a second filter here. It gets more complicated. Good. And then if already a location exists, so I mean, when I create the first document, of course, it will not exist. And then the second time around, it will be existing. This hierarchical thing forces me to use a do while. Yeah, so I need to I need to get the parent location, which I stored here in a variable, and then compose the parent location's relative URL with a slash and my currently stored already existing folder path, so that I always prepend it with a slash until I am at the SharePoint site. So this is done until the parent is the SharePoint site. And then I have the full URL, which I can use in the SharePoint connector. So these actions always, they of course, they cannot work with a CRM record. They need the URL of the folder to put the file in or something like this. So I can build that folder path by just going through this do while loop here. And then, yeah, you always compose them backwards. So, okay, I'm a little bit late, so let's use the last 10 minutes of this for Teams. Teams I've set up here at an opportunity, and I think it's this 5 coffee, and I need to open Teams for sure. So let's close some things. So I have used the collaborate button here. You set this up in the app settings, and it's just called Teams. It's very self-explanatory. And then you can use create new connection, where you then select either an existing team or a new team. Here's create new team. I will stop this because of the time. To connect a Dynamics record to Teams, and I think so. This is important because every team comes with its own SharePoint site. So this already implies there can be a SharePoint integration, and there is the SharePoint integration. It looks a little bit different. You can see here there's a team symbol now, yeah. But apart from that, there are folders, and I can navigate the folders, and okay, I can create a word inside that folder. Everything the same. Just the way how you get it is different, because it's not auto created when you select the files here, but you need to use the collaborate button. But you have an advantage if you use those teams, and the advantage is that you so I've talked about this multi-site department. If you need a closely guarded security concept around these files where only certain people can manage these files, for example, the opportunity, a small team of sellers will be working at the opportunity and everyone else shall probably be locked out, especially if there are documents in there that are sensitive, that contain customer data. Also, if you are, I don't know, quoting or something, yeah, there could be documents that really shouldn't be accessible to anyone else. This is a good thing. And I mean, in the end, what do you expect? Okay, you go to files in the in Teams and you see the same thing. So if you collaborate even with people outside of Dynamics CRM, they will see the documents, they can add to their documents, and the sellers then can see it in their opportunity or account or what else in the in Dynamics. Disadvantage of this, while the SharePoint integration worked for every entity, every custom entity, it does not work for Teams. Teams is tied to a list of entities that's in the Microsoft Docs, and only these can be used. So okay, those are the standard entities, right? You can, I think, pretty sure you can use case, you can use account, contact, opportunity, quote is also in there. So this is enabled for most of the standard stuff, but yeah, you cannot use it on a custom entity. Good. So Teams. Then we can take already a look at Teams automation. I've talked about the document locations. I will be using the tables feature of Make Power Apps because the entity, so while document locations, I was just able to get them by the advanced settings, not possible for the Teams entity. And the first thing here in tables in Make Power Apps, switch to all and not recommended because otherwise the search will not work. So it's something about Teams, and the one I'm looking for is called Microsoft Teams Collaboration Entity. And while they've excluded it from the advanced find, for example, you can still see the values here in this grid. This was the 5 coffee. There are a lot of columns, so they store a lot of things like the channel ID and I don't know, something about piped entity ID that was used to pin the record. Yeah, I have no idea. The important thing for the SharePoint integration here is that they store the collaboration channel relative folder URL, and at the very end, I think it is, here, the team site URL, they are storing where the site is located. And this here for test opportunity, we will see in a second. I've just created those, and I see, by the way, the relative URL has not worked perfectly, but it still works. Is created by a flow, and you basically only need to make sure, so you do not need to fill all the so like these collaboration app IDs you can just ignore. Just make sure that the collaboration channel relative URL as well as the channel ID, and then the same is true for team ID and the team site URL. So just fill these and you will be good. So let's try to create a new opportunity, GBB2. And in a few seconds, we will then see this opportunity pop up as a team in Teams. And while we wait for that, I will look into the Teams customization. We'll edit this one in a new tab as well. And on a high level, this is kind of easier because you only have one record. And if you do anything afterwards, like storing a file or something, you only have that one record, right, which has the full base URL and the relative path in there. So yeah, it's just easier with Teams. But you basically need to create a team, and in the end, you create a Microsoft Teams collaboration entity. And it sounds so easy. Yeah, in reality, you forgetting all these forgetting all these values. In the meanwhile, you, for example, need to get the team. You need to list its channels to get the ID of the general channel. Then you need to ask for the SharePoint URL, which is not supplied by any of the Teams connectors. So you need to use the Graph connector. If this is all too quick, yeah, just Google my name, go to my website and search just for Teams. You will find an article detailing all of this because, yeah, screenshots, I'm too quick for that. So you need to get all of this information to really be able to create a Microsoft Teams collaboration entity. And I think I'm very good now in the time again, so we can take a look here. In the meanwhile, this flow ran. It created a Teams. If we look at files, usually the first time you open it, it shows you some error. Yes. So then you switch back to posts and then files, and there are our files in Teams. We can create an Excel. And if I look over at the opportunity in Dynamics, switch to files, Y, Don't you like me? Because I have never refreshed, probably. No. Is my flow too slow? It worked in the morning with the test opportunity. It failed. Okay, I will therefore. Oh. Yeah. Okay, yeah, then we have found another thing. 5 seconds is too slow. The graph has some kind of indexing that makes it slow, but we can just use the test opportunity I used earlier. So yeah, we already have some documents in here. So the general idea, you see the same thing here, right? Everything you do in Teams, you see in Dynamics, and the other way around, everything you do in SharePoint, you also see in Dynamics or in Teams. And the important bit also is, okay, you are not replicating the files, right? It's not copied over or something. No, we are just showing what is in the SharePoint location here. So similar to the concept of virtual entities, right? You are not storing a copy in dataverse, but we are just requesting from the source how does the record currently look like. Good. I'm 1 minute late. Any questions for this? Oh, sorry, I forgot to share the last slide. Thanks.
I wouldn't say that you're a minute late. So we have 50 minutes now for questions. So any questions? There is a question from Johan Everett. If you need to manage a security model where the users only can work on their own records and the related files, how would you implement the security in corresponding SharePoint site? Due to volumes, manual work is not possible.
Yes, okay, there is, how is it called? So if you really need those fine-grained things, Dynamics, SharePoint, permission, replicator, yeah, I think this is the one. So there is a software to do exactly that. So this basically says, okay, if you can only read the SharePoint folder if you have access. I think you can even say which access. If you need write access or read access is enough on the record in Dynamics, and tries to set up the sharing. I see the problem especially if you say volumes are too high. The problem is that, I mean, basically you can implement, for example, auto sharing, right? Like here with the share button, manage access. If you implement solutions on auto sharing and you get a lot of auto sharing, like millions of records, the security model has really a problem. So if you then try to list, for example, if I try to list here in site contents the accounts, and I mean that was blazing fast. I had no time for anything. It will take suddenly seconds or even 10 seconds to list the whole the folders I have access to, because it needs to evaluate so many sharing so many sharings in PowerPoint. Sorry, in SharePoint. So the advice I receive from people who work more with SharePoint is, don't do it on a folder level. Unless you have only a few folders, right? But if you have thousands, or I've seen a system with millions of folders, because there were millions of records, in CRM, and people needed those to store pictures, and they just opened the document tab once and suddenly there's a folder. And then over years you grow to millions of folders, and if you have sharing set up for 10 different users on each folder, your system will go down based just on the security of these folders. So you could work with Teams integration, but if the volume is really high, that's what open office files and browsers good. If the volume is really high, you have the problem also that you would create many teams, right? So also not a good option here, because if you handle, let's say, 50 records a day and you get 50 teams for that, no way, right? You are handling that with hiding teams and stuff. So sadly, I have not really good option for that. Maybe you can slack your security settings here a little bit for groups. Let me go here. So the standard creates, if you open the files tab, the standards would always create an account. You can do nothing about it. But what you could do is you could create, for example, separate document locations or sites for something like departments. So if it's like 20 or something, you can still manage that. And you are the one, so with something like a flow, you are creating the folder location to make sure. So then you can tie down based on the sites or locations who has access to it to something like a team of person. That way you can limit sharing, but it will then never be down to the individual user level and record level, because that would be unhandleable, basically. A lot of talk for no satisfying answer.
I wouldn't say it like this, because I'm with you. You have to rethink then how you want to use SharePoint and the security settings if you have these high volume amounts, and think about other options. And I think you mentioned it, but one thing is then not to activate the automatic document location where you have this parent accounting. Just use the SharePoint integration, and then you have to define for yourself what will be your parent folder and how will you structure the integration of the folders. So everything what you build based on the account level, you can then do with custom folders, like an organizational structure